The 60 card lifestyle, how lessons from deck building can be used to drastically improve your life, focus on what you want to do with your life, eliminate distractions, zoom in, surround yourself with more fun things, more fun people, more fun activities. Welcome in, much love. Trav here. Getting a little bit deep into life philosophy today. Really probably actually the most important thing I've ever learned from Magic, and something that I wrote about several times back when I was writing for Channel Fireball, but I realized that I've never made a video talking about it, so I had to do it. So this is for anyone who plays Magic, anyone who's ever built a deck. It's also for anyone who just wants to make their life better. And if you find this useful, you can share it with non-Magic playing friends. But here's the basic premise. The basic premise is opportunity cost. That in order to do something, you have to cut something else. In order to do something with your time, you have to cut something else from your time. Therefore, if you're making time for marginal, menial, minor tasks, you're actually cutting time that could be spent on doing some really amazing things. Not a lot of people get this because it seems free to do something, but time is not free because there's an opportunity cost. And this is something that you learn in Magic that's also not obvious in Magic and takes a while to learn. And even some semi-advanced players don't really get this, which is why it's deeper. It's a deeper thing and why it needs to be talked about. So basically in Magic, you can play any number of cards. You can play a ton of cards if you want, massive deck, 300 cards. But what ends up happening is it's generally best, almost always, to play the minimum number of cards, whether that's 40 in limited or 60 in constructed. Why is that? Well, usually you have one best card or several best cards, and you want to draw that card no matter what. So if you're adding other cards to your deck, you're diluting your deck. You are making it less likely that you draw the one card, the one thing that you actually want to do, and more likely you just draw some filler, right? So often you hear in Magic, when looking at decks, like, why don't you add this card? It's like, well, what are you going to cut? You have to cut something, otherwise you're just diluting, you're just distracting, you're just adding, right? There's an opportunity cost to drawing a card. Is the new card that you're adding better than your best card? If no, then don't play it. Play the very, very minimum, right? And there's a few strategic exceptions to this, but that's basically the principle of playing 60 cards and playing 40 cards. And you can apply this to life as well. If you're still here listening, get out pen and paper if you can. If it's in your room, go get some pen and paper, or start going on, load up the comments down below. And we're going to do an exercise, which I did in my old article, I'm going to do with you today, is really useful. And that is writing down your use of time like you would write down your deck list, right? You have 24 hours in the day. You could say you have 24 cards in your deck. If you want to go smaller increments in 30 minutes, you could say you have 48 cards, right? So for instance, if you're sleeping 8 hours a day, then you're using 16 of your 48 cards on sleep. And that's kind of like your mana, is the way that I see it. On one hand, you want to reduce that. On the other hand, you don't want to get mana screwed. You don't want to get mentally fatigued, right? Like, why play so many lands when you could play so many spells? Because it's one of the most important resources. Without it, nothing else is going to function, right? Okay, so you have however much sleep, and you want to look at, are you getting enough? Are you not getting enough? Are you playing enough lands? Are you not playing enough lands, right? And then you want to look at the things that you're doing. And again, an example of this is people ask me, Trav, you're not editing your videos. You should put in more time, make it more professional. And I get that. I agree. And ideally, my videos would, I guess, have some flashy edits or some intros and stuff like that. But when I'm doing daily videos on 2.5 channels, that's going to take an hour a day or more. And I can't just add that hour. I have to subtract. I have to cut cards. And the cards that I'm cutting are really good. It's like surfing, doing farm work, reading, playing basketball, working out, playing Magic, right? All these fun things that I could be doing instead of spending that hour on edits, instead of all these marginal menial things like clearing my email, clicking on red on all my notifications. I don't do that. Why? Because I don't want to cut other cards from my deck, which are much better and more important, right? So if you're making a deck list, mine has 16 sleep, maybe even more like 20 sleep or 18 sleep. I like to sleep a lot. I like to play a lot of lands too, because it's important, right? Then I'll have, it really depends on my life, but I would say that I like to spend 4 or more hours doing athletic things, so 8 cards there. That really depends. Right now, I'm actually doing 5 hours of farm work a day, so I put 10 of those cards in. I'm spending about 15 minutes on basketball, so half a card there. Again, you do more increments, split, just so it's easier to break it down. 15 minutes and then 15 minutes on weightlifting, so together 1 card there. I'm spending probably a couple hours or an hour eating, so 2 to 4 cards on that. And eating right now in cafe with friends generally is pretty cool. I'm spending maybe 30 minutes to an hour doing meditative deep thinking, so there's that card. I'm spending about an hour a day reading, 2 cards there, right? So I'm making, and this is what the pen and paper is for, really making a deck list and seeing what you can cut and what you can add. There might be things that you're doing that you don't really want to do. For instance, I have 0 traffic cards. I don't spend time in traffic. I don't commute. I don't drive. I don't want to, right? Because I would much rather do other things. Yeah. I don't spend cards on worrying because I just don't have time to major in minor things, as Jim Rohn says. And you shouldn't either. I don't spend cards on a lot of other things that other people do because, when I'm making my list, it varies from different times. Sometimes I'm playing tons of Magic, sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I'm spending tons of time online doing online business building stuff, sometimes I'm not, but I'm always looking to rebalance and strip it down and focus on the essentials. There's also a Bruce Lee philosophy of focus on, what does he say? Hack away at the unessential, right? There's all these things that you could be doing, you can be spending cards on that just are not essential, and they're taking from essential activities, and you want to zoom in on what is actually essential to you. And that's going to be different depending on who you are and what it is, but your true vocation, your true path, your hobbies that you love to do, the things that you can't live without. You want to play as many of those cards as possible. More time with your family, more time, etc., etc. Like maybe you're spending too many cards on social media. I spend probably an hour a day on Facebook, Twitter, and all that. Maybe more on some days. I think an hour is okay, actually. But when I start to spend 2 hours, 4 cards, 2 to 4 cards, it starts to feel like too much. And I'm like, wow, that time could have been spent on something that's more essential, more productive, my best card, So I think that's basically it. I want to keep it simple, but it would be cool if you wrote down your deck list, your 60 card, or you could do, I like 48 just because it's half-hour increments, your 48 card lifestyle, what you're spending your time on, and what your life looks like. And then you can throw in your sideboard. Sideboard can be your dreams, your goals, what you want to switch your life into, or seasonal stuff, because sometimes you have to work more at different times than other times, or do different stuff based on all sorts of other factors. But it would be cool to see in the comments what you have, and I think it would also be really useful for you to do, just so you can look at and basically audit. It's a time audit is what we're doing, is another way of describing it. Giving yourself a time audit. Time audit is basically look at every little thing you're spending time on and evaluate if it's worth it or not worth it, right? And what you'll find is there's some things that are more important than others, and other things you're wasting your time on, and you got to cut out, right? And that's just step 1. Step 2 is actually going ahead and trying to change your habits. But once you have it down on paper, it's a lot easier to do because you understand what you're actually doing with your time. You understand where your priorities are actually at mentally, and you get to understand where your priorities are actually at physically, what you're doing. And make adjustments from there. So appreciate you. Look forward to hearing what you have to say. Again, I said this is probably the most important thing I've learned from Magic. and I don't know how it took me so long to make a video. If you find it useful, share it. Go ahead and share this concept with someone else. Could be a Magic player, could be a non-Magic player. I think everyone can benefit from it. So I look forward to hearing what you have to say in the comments. Should be pretty cool. Some pretty cool responses. Much love and speak soon. Peace.